In the fourth and final episode, I'll sit down with Gary Pica, who leveraged community building in the managed services industry to propel his last company, TruMethods, into a leadership position, and then allowed him to sell his company, putting a cap on his extremely successful career. Today, Gary still works with peer groups in the MSP community, and he sits on a number of boards. The importance of community has never been more important from a marketing and revenue generation perspective. And Gary and I will go deep and help you think about this opportunity for your business, how building a community, a thriving community, and how that you can turn that interest into business for your company. At the end of this episode, we'll share some very special offers only available to those people who watch and stay till the end of the episode. Hey everybody, I'm Mike Lieberman, CEO and Chief Revenue Scientist at Square 2, and welcome to the fourth and final episode of B2B Big Story video series. I'm here with Gary Pica. He leveraged community building in the managed service industry to propel his last company, TruMethods, into a leadership position, and then he sold the company to put a cap on his extremely successful career. Today, Gary still works with peer groups in the MSP industry and sits on a number of boards. He knows better than anybody the importance of community building. And today it's never been more important from a marketing and revenue generation perspective. Gary and I are going to talk today about community building, how to build a thriving community, and how to turn that interest into leads and revenue for your company. So Gary, welcome to the show. Really appreciate you doing this with me.
Thanks, Mike. It's great to see you. And I'm excited to have a conversation about things that are really meaningful to me.
Yeah, that's great. I know you go way back with Square 2 and our company. We've been helping you for a long time. And, you know, I'd like to say we may have had some small part in you and your exit anyway. So
Absolutely.
I'm always happy when entrepreneurs get the exit they've been looking for. And it's been a good run with Square 2 and TruMethods. So let me kick off by giving you a little context to what I want to talk to you about today. Square 2 and the team here has been doing a lot of studying and research over the past year and this is not only our insights. A lot of people are starting to talk about this. Some of the traditional marketing and sales tactics are are getting out of date, and the playbooks around lead gen and revenue growth and even sales engagement are also maybe getting a little out of date. And we're all pretty comfortable with the idea that many of us are exhausted from the digital outreach we've been getting. You know, I really am kind of disgusted with my LinkedIn feed and all the crap that's in it. I find it a lot less valuable than it was 5 or 6 years ago.
Great.
My inbox is filled with people who are attempting to just try to get 5 minutes with me, 15 minutes with me, 30 minutes with me. I don't know who they are, what their business is, or why I would even talk to them. And I'm kind of, you know, discouraged that so many people are doing the same kind of outbound and the same kind of outreach over and over again when I know they're not really getting the results. So I want you to really help educate me and our audience around what you did at TruMethods to build your community. You kind of went into it with the idea that community was important, and you did it at an innovative time when no one was really doing it. So I'm really interested in your backstory. You know, what were you thinking? How did you go about doing it at TruMethods? And from there, you know, I have a couple of other questions and we can get into it a little bit. Maybe you want to start by giving our audience a little bit of background on you and kind of what you've done and what kind of brought you to this decision around TruMethods and the community part of it.
Yeah. So the Reader's Digest version on my background is I graduated from Penn State with a marketing degree. I didn't even know what marketing was or how to get a marketing job. So I ended up in sales, and I did that for
everybody, right?
Yeah, I did that for a number of years. And then I ended up buying into an IT provider. We call them managed service providers, or MSPs. Basically, these are the companies that are the outsourced IT department for most companies under 200 users. And I built that company, figured out some things, even there on a small scale with community, and was able to scale that business, and it was acquired. And once that happened, I really thought about, I wanted to share what I had learned, with other people. So I started TruMethods, and TruMethods ended up having 3 pieces to it. Training, which I did in a recorded many to one. So we recorded videos that IT providers on how to run their business. Then we started peer groups, which is in itself a community. And then we built some software, which became the financial and economic driver of our business. We had a lot of success with the software, mainly because of community. So my goal was, both with the culture of our company and in the industry, that I wanted to create a brand that people were curious about. And when they thought of it, they had a feeling. And that feeling was, that's awesome. That's something I want to be a part of. Mm-hmm. So, underneath it is like the old school stuff, which is, we're a content thought leader. But in terms of everything that we do, we wanted to make we call our customers members, to have our members feel like they are really part of something special. And as we grew that, have it leak out to everything that we did. Our webinars, when we're at an event, we always had this feeling like people, and it's almost like I try to take the approach that, number one, we are a community. That's what we are. We're not a software company. We're not a training company, and we're not a peer company. We are a community. And as part of that community, we offer those things. Oh, and by the way, we charge on them, and we're good business people, and we have really high margins. And the result of it, Mike, was efficiency. Like the way we were able to grow our company compared to the other companies like that are pure software companies in our industry, with the amount of resources we have, was like people could never understand. Like, how are you able to do this with the amount of marketing and sales resources you have compared to everybody else who dwarfs you and raised $20 million, right? And are doing it by spending millions of dollars. And I take that as a big compliment.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Can you talk a little bit more about your kind of one-to-many approach with your content? Because I find that is a big challenge too for a lot of companies today. They kind of know they need content to fuel their revenue generation machine, but they're struggling to create the content. They need a lot of help to create the content. But you seemed like you kind of cracked the code on that also. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think people make it harder than it needs to be. I mean, you can repurpose a lot of stuff. Like, I like webinars and podcasts. And the reason I like them is you can get a subject, you can work on it. Then I can chop it up into a bunch of pieces to make video to put out. I can take it and have somebody write it and write the blogs from it. Like, I can spend a little time doing one thing and have it turn into 10 or 15 different things. Include a lot of our customers and members in that content. Let them help us with it. And I'll give you one example. And I did this when I owned my first company just internally, and I carried it. I used to record with my IT provider every week a little audio message, not a podcast, an audio message, 2 to 5 minutes on all different types of topics. And I saw that, I did it for about 2 months. And I didn't know what kind of effect it had. And then I got busy and didn't do it for a couple of weeks. And all my employees started saying, hey, where's the audio message? Mm-hmm. Like, they were connecting with it. So there's a simple example. For 10 years, every week, I've been recording a little audio message, 3 to 5 minutes. That thing I now have 10 years worth of content. If you told me, oh, Gary, you got to do it, you got to do this for every week for 10 years, I never would have started it. Right. But all I did it 1 week. And then I've just done it 1 week. And now I have 10 years that I've done it. I'm known for it. Like, everybody knows it. So I think, Mike, part of it is getting started. And I think the second part of it is, I like a theme. And at TruMethods, and I think this is a really good theme, I like what I call us against the world. And us against the world means, hey, we're in this industry and they have all these expectations about what's possible, but they don't understand the business the way that we do. Our community, we help and support each other. We tell other people what's possible. We do things that other people think can't be done, and we make it look easy to give people that feeling like everybody wants to be part of something they feel is bigger than just them. And so in everything we do, I look to say, is that thread in there? Are they going to feel like they're part of something special? Are they going to feel like they can do things because they're part of our community, even if they don't pay us, right? I almost don't care. The paying us part just comes over time. Like everyone is welcome. We don't say like, oh, I'm going to tell you like a couple things, but if you want the rest, you got to put your credit card in. We'll give you whatever you want. But you're going to want, the more you know, the more you're going to want to be part of our community.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You've also had some very unique aspects to your community, specifically like I'm talking about Schnizzfest. Can you talk a little bit about where you came up with the name and what it is, and how you use that to kind of make connections with the people in the community?
Yeah. So when I had my MSP, I don't know, we had this little thing we called the schniz, and it had like a little hand movement with it. And it was just this idea of when you're schnizzing, it's when you're kicking butt. It's like your attitude, your self-image, your self-discipline. And so when I left and I started TruMethods, the concept came with us and people hooked onto it. So we have a mascot. I'm looking at him over here, Stanley Schnizzer. And we named our event Schnizzfest. And we had people do our little schniz maneuver, and we have a master schnizzer that's named at every one of the events. And so because of it, Mike, and we have a lot of sayings like this is one of them. Let's go, people. We have a call and response. I yell, hey-o, and every people yell. So all these kind of things, like we probably have 5 different statements, taglines that we use over and over again that people love and makes them feel part of that community. And I'll tell you, the result is, we were acquired by what now is $1 billion software company. As many people know TruMethods as know that $1 billion software company in our industry. It confounds them, right? And this is the reason why these little things that you talk about, and it's like it's the art of it, not just the science, right? The science is important, and we have that too. We have to have our content, and we have to have our funnels, and we have our MQLs and our SQLs and our direct business offer. All of that science and what it should be and the conversion rates on it is the bottom. And people, I think, try to force that instead of thinking about this stuff that makes it fun and feeling. And when that's your community, just everything else, all the science becomes easy.
Yeah. I mean, we're talking about B2B big story, which is exactly what you're talking about. So maybe you could take us back a little bit, like before you did any of this, right? Sure, a lot of people are listening to this being like, wow, like that does seem like a good idea, but how am I going to possibly create this community and these catchphrases and all of this content and an event? Like, tell me a little bit about what you were thinking before you did all these things, right? Like what was going through your mind that made you decide to focus on the big story for TruMethods and the community that was going to go with it? And then I'm also curious a little bit about maybe what some of your first steps were. Maybe it was the audio message, but like, what were some of those first moves you made that kind of got the ball rolling?
Yep. So in the beginning, how I got to it was, here we are. Like in the beginning, it was just me, right? And in this big industry with all these people that had products and money and said, well, what can I do now? Right? Well, I can start to have people understand what we are. And I hadn't made my product yet. Our first training product, I sold it before I delivered it. So how can I get out in this community? Go to some local events, call up some vendors, see if I could do some co-branding and stuff with some of the people that had big marketing budgets, that had big lists and stuff. And I remember one of the first events I went to, there was a room, probably 200 people, in this room. And I started off by telling people, I'm going to give away $4,000 of our training and what we have today to the top schnizzer. And they're like, well, what are you talking about? And I made everybody stand up and I taught them how to schniz. They all schnizzed. A guy in the front row, he was from Boston. It was the middle of winter and he was wearing shorts and a t-shirt. When I told him that that's what they would win, he probably weighed about 380 pounds. He ripped off his shirt and started schnizzing. Everyone, there was like 2,000 people at that event. Every single one of them was talking about what happened in that room to little TruMethods at one of our first events.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And that kind of gave you like the idea that this might catch on and you really should lean into it. And
yeah, and then just go with it from there. I mean, we developed our mascot, Stanley Schnizzer. We named our event Schnizzfest. We just kind of leaned into it and we made it more and more absurd. I mean, here's one of the Schnizzfests. We did the Declaration of Schniz Dependence. Right. And we literally went and I rewrote the Declaration of Independence and things like, our industry has oppressed us, the notion of what's really possible, that us against, and everybody signed it. And, they left. And I always feel like we're having our next event, Schnizzfest in Phoenix in January. And the idea is when those doors close to let everybody know, hey, the doors have closed out there. There's certain things possible. In here, we decide what's possible. And see how that feels?
Yeah, like that's people want to be part of something that they feel like is theirs, and they're connected to other people like them.
Yeah, no one sells software, no one sells products. We all sell hope. The hope that not only our business can be better, but that we can be better, right? That we can have a level of passion and enthusiasm that comes from being a part of something. And so, and if you can just tap in a little bit, it almost at some point, Mike, what I'll tell you, it rolls downhill. Like our community really took it over. We only kind of lit the match.
Right. That's a good point. How did the rest of the community participate? Right. So you kind of got them started and got the ball rolling. Like how did all those people fuel it for you?
When you go to other industry events, you see people, they're wearing their Let's Go People t-shirt. We have these giant foam schniz hands. They're walking around the hallways. They want everyone to know they're part of TruMethods, right? And so once you give those people feeling that they have some sense of pride with that, and guess what? And they're going to continue to buy your software. They're not going to leave you. They're going to continue to pay you every month. You can charge a premium. You can have higher margins than your competition. All that's great. Listen, I love money, right? Luckily, money loves me, but it has always been the result of my second job. First job is to build community and make people feel good. My second job is to be a competent business person who understands my margins and how that works, so that when all this works, that we know how to turn it into a profitable and valuable business.
Yeah. Help me with one thing, because I'm constantly looking at things like this and thinking to myself, what are the people watching it going to say that might prevent them from doing it? Right. So I'm looking at you. You're obviously very passionate about this. You're animated. You're well spoken. Like you have a clear. I think you had a clear vision on what you were trying to build when you started to get into it. I mean, maybe it figured itself out over time, right? And maybe it got a little bit of a life of its own. But I think you had a pretty good idea of what you thought it could be. So what would you say to someone who's watching this and saying like, yeah, I can't really do what Gary did. Like, I'm not that person. I don't have that kind of vision. Maybe I'm really good at my business, but the idea of leading a community and being, what do you call it? Flamboyant and outgoing and an extrovert, like that's just not me. Like, what would you say to those people who are looking at this and saying like, I get it, but I don't think I could do it?
Well, first off, I wasn't me in 2009. I mean, the first time, Mike, that I had to go and speak in front of people, can I tell you, it was one of the scariest things that I ever did.
Right.
Like, it just took time. I think it starts like this. One, you have to have a vision of what you want your company to be and what you want your community to be. And then the key thing is you have to get some other people around you, right, that believe in that vision. I wouldn't have been able to do it otherwise, because there was times when I had some people around me who I needed to believe in the vision in me more than I believed in myself. So you have to get, a small group. I call it Team Schniz. It's the company within the company that are totally in lockstep, and everybody has different talents. Like, I get to take the credit for a lot of it, but a lot of what got created for me, and even how people view me in the company, was really the team around me. And I think that's really critical. And then, as much as you can, spread that to everybody. I make sure that all of our employees know, hey, every call we make is more important to the customer than it is to us. This might be the one where they get it, and they're going to unlock their potential in whatever it is that you deliver, right? So, and if you do that, you do it in your way. It doesn't have to be like, I see people do it who are completely different, personalities than I am, and probably more mentally healthy, than me. So I don't think it's a one size fits all, that you need to be like, Tony Robbins to build a community. I think if you are sincere and really believe in what you do and what it does for the customers, which, by the way, if you don't have that, I mean, good luck. I invest in some startups, and I go to some startup, events, and I categorize two people in the first 30 seconds: the ones who come up, who tell me what they're trying to solve and how passionate they are, and the ones who just tell me about their valuation.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. The team comment. Oh yeah, it makes complete sense. And the team comment is very interesting to me also. Obviously, my company helps companies do some of the things you're talking about doing, but I'm wondering if you could drill down a little bit on what the team might look like. Like, what did you have them doing for you, and maybe what were the roles in the beginning? I'm very interested in the beginning, not necessarily when it was up and running, but like when you first started out, where did you feel like you needed some help?
Yeah. So I had one other person who came with me from my other business. He was my CTO, and he and I were the start of it, of thinking about these crazy ideas of how to have fun. And then my son came to work for us, and really using some partners. I mean, one of them was you guys, Square Two. We had never really done marketing in the same sense when I was in the IT business. It was more of a sales driven business back then. It's not today. It's now it's marketing driven. So we had to use like some third parties. We had a creative third party. We had we worked with Square Two, and we started to put like the building blocks, in place. And so we built a small marketing team. We had outsourced creative. We figured out like, okay, where online and where in person do our customers gather? And then I said, who else works with them? Who has bigger budgets? Is there some relationship we can make with them to try to create force multipliers? Do you know what I mean?
100%. Yes. I mean, we counsel people regularly to try to partner with complementary companies that don't compete directly, especially when they have bigger audiences, because obviously they're going to pull you along to those audiences. And as long as you add value, they're not threatened by your participation in either an event or their own marketing or however they're talking about their business.
But be self-aware. I mean, the reason we were so successful at it is my approach is like, listen, here's what we like to do. Would this be valuable to you? Would this be valuable to your customers? How would it be valuable to you? And let me tell you then, if it is, let me tell you why we do it and what we'd be looking to get out of it. I have people come to me all the time that say, oh, we got this great product. Why don't you promote it to your customers? Because it's really going to be great for them. And I'm like, no, it's going to be great for you.
Right.
Like, I'm not here to promote your stuff. And my customers are fine without you.
Right.
So they come acting on the surface like you're trying to help me, but they're just really trying to get my influence. So I don't ever want anyone that I go to feel that way. So I'm upfront about what we get in return, but mainly asking them, how do we, and these are the words I use, how do we ring the bell for you?
Mm-hmm.
And if you have those conversations 10 times, which I did probably 20 times, and of those 10 or 20, I found 3 or 4 people where we, and they literally helped me build my business. They were definitely force multipliers. That's so critical. Or else you'll think it doesn't work. Oh, well, no one wants to work with us. No, you're not approaching it in the right way.
Right. That's really good advice. All right. So I think you have a unique perspective on business today. Like I mentioned earlier, on some boards, and you're involved in some startups. So curious from your perspective, what you see as some of the major challenges facing companies today from a marketing and sales perspective. What do you think are some of the big issues people are dealing with?
Look, I'll talk about the 2 industries I know now intimately. I know the go-to-market for IT providers, like professional services, and I know the go-to-market for software, right? Business to business software. And some of the common things I see is a lot of companies and business leaders, they don't really have command over their business model in terms of their key cost drivers and those kind of things. But in a go-to-market standpoint, they don't have command either. Like they're not thinking about what are the forces that hold me back. Let me give you an example. There's one software company that I worked closely with. I helped their sales team a little bit, and they had a product they were selling to MSPs, and they had success in the beginning. High-end product. It costs most MSPs like $1,200 or $1,400 a month, which is a lot. The average tool is $300 to $400, but it was valuable. They got about 800 customers, and that was the 800 customers to buy anything. Then they got stuck. So they said to me, well, hey, it seems like the rest of the market, they want a lower priced offering. So we're going to come out with something that's $500 a month. And my question to them was, well, how are you going to get to them? Are you going to have the same cost, like the same CAC? The same client acquisition cost? Because if you do, your rack, what it costs you to get $1 recurring revenue is going to triple. And now it's going to cost you so much more, 3 times as much to grow revenue. You're going to be back raising money. And so Mike, they don't know their math and science. They don't know their acquisition cost, what their rack is. And these things that create this resistance in your business, and you deal with and they just deal with the symptoms of the resistance, trying to turn the Rubik's Cube, where if they really understood it and made better decisions around that, they could take off.
Yeah, that's really good advice. Before I wrap up, I want to just kind of circle back to this concept of big story, which is what we're talking about in this series. So what would if someone asked you at TruMethods, what's TruMethods' story? How would you articulate that?
Like when someone says to me on a plane, what do you do for a living?
Well, I mean, I think it's kind of that, but
yeah,
it's a little less elevator pitch and a little more like I guess mission or passion. Like how if I was an MSP, right? If I owned an MSP and I somehow stumbled on TruMethods and I knew nothing about you from your legacy, right? Like, what would I when I first started to interact with TruMethods in terms of, like, what is this company trying to do? What is their big story? Like, what would I see when I first started interacting with you?
Yeah. So the short answer would be, we make grown men cry. Right? We make companies more awesome. But the bigger story, what I would tell some people is like, hey, let me ask you a couple questions. Do you feel like you get stuck in your business? Like, do you think that you've fulfilled your potential in terms of like, is this where you thought you'd be after a number of years in business in terms of growth and profitability? We've unlocked that. So my vision, my passion is we're in an entrepreneurial business. We sell mainly to entrepreneurs. Is we help entrepreneurs unlock the potential, and that changes the lives of not only them, but their teams and their customers. And
Right.
then they always say like, well, what do you mean? Or how do you do that? And the how do you do it part, Mike, is easy. Everyone listening can tell people why and how they're great. It's that first piece, which is connecting with whoever that buyer persona is and being able to, lean into what you know about that gap that you fill, and in an assumptive way, giving them the end result.
Yeah. It's interesting. You really know who your personas are. You really know who your people you're talking to are. You're not talking about what TruMethods does. You're really talking about what their issues are, and you're tweaking a pretty significant emotional pain for them that they are on their own, and they are trying to figure it out, and they haven't been as successful as maybe they wanted to be, and they don't make as much money as they want to be, or maybe they're more worried than they need to be. And the answer to that question is TruMethods. You have
Yep.
something that is repeatable and scalable, and it's going to solve their problems and make them a lot happier in their own businesses. So in essence, your big story is connecting with their emotional pain to the kinds of products and services you sell.
Absolutely. And that's TruMethods, but like the other companies I'm involved with, it's really the same thing. Like what an MSP says to their customer, it's the same concept. One of the software companies I invest in, they're not, they deal with the end user, the person who actually does the tickets. So
Right.
it's a completely different buyer persona, but that concept is the exact same. Where I try to lead them is, what is it? In the first couple minutes, how do you paint the end result first? And when you get to the product and you talk about your product or service, the goal of it shouldn't be to sell. It should only be to explain how you deliver what they already agreed. The end result is that they want.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, we've done some work for other MSPs over the years, and I know that they are typically selling to business owners who have this issue with their laptops and their network and their security. And generally what some of the big stories that we've rolled out to these kinds of companies are, we're going to help you eliminate the noise, because that is generally what happens for those business owners. Hey, my laptop's not working. What can I do about it? Hey, I can't get on the internet. What should I do about it? Hey, what do I do about this software? Right. And they're business owners. They're not IT people. They don't know how to handle these issues. They don't really want to be dealing with these issues. And to have somebody that can come in and just deal with it and take it off their plate is generally what I think a lot of those people are looking for. So again, that's a similar approach to their kind of personal pain, and something that emotionally that's preventing them from doing the things that they really think they should be doing.
Yeah, and even on a small scale, when I had my MSP, I created almost like a CEO council of customers and prospects. And I would when I would meet new people, like, hey, not only will you be a customer, but let me tell you how we bring business leaders together. And what I found from dealing with business leaders like you, I found that most of them are lonely. And so even before we get to our services, I still was selling this idea of community, because it's so universal, no matter what your product or service.
Yeah.
Everyone's lonely, Mike.
Yeah, they are. You're right. That's interesting. Like, you really had this community seed even before you got to TruMethods. So yeah, really interesting. Gary, thanks. Before we wrap up, anything else you'd like to add?
No, this was a lot of fun. I hope that people find it valuable. And I guess in closing, what I would say is, if you can go back and go through this one more time, don't take the lens that you had talked about, which is, well, that doesn't apply to my market or my product, or I'm not like that. Don't take that lens. Take the lens. I've seen companies in every industry be successful with this, and you don't have to be great at it day one. Just get started, and what it yields over time multiplies. And everything else you're doing with marketing, every dollar that we spend on marketing is so much more effective because of it.
Yeah, I could not agree more. Like, the first really important point is, it doesn't have to be perfect. Just get started. Just do something, right? Make some kind of forward motion in this area. You'll learn from it. You'll adjust. You'll do better the next time, and it'll grow and get better. The other thing I think, and we talk to our clients about this really frequently, is, and you mentioned it too, once you go down this path, you really got to stick with it. You can't give up after 3 months because your business hasn't doubled. We're like, this is a long-term commitment that you need to like lean into and be confident that this is something you're going to be doing for a very, very, very long time, maybe even the life of your business, right?
Yep.
I think that's the two really important points. And the other thing is there's a lot of people that can help with this, right? You don't have to be the master of all of the aspects of this community building piece of it. There are people that can help with video. There are people that can help with content. There are people that can help with your website or an event that you want to do like Schnizzfest. Like there are a lot of resources that you can lean into to help you get some momentum and continue doing this and get it to the point where it's starting to produce results for your clients. And the last thing I'm going to leave everybody with is we all know what we've been doing isn't working. And I think now is the time, and 2023 specifically is the time to really lean into something new. And while community building isn't new for you, you've had the seed and you've been showing us all that this really works and produces results. I think there are a lot of companies that are still trying to force feed the old, like you said, the old content to a page, to a conversion, to a nurture, to emails. Like that playbook's just not going to work going forward. So if there's ever been a time to try something different and to lean into this concept of community and helping people and bringing them together and making connections and adding a lot of value beyond your product or service, I really think now is the time to consider that.
I agree with you, man.
Yeah. Gary, I really appreciate your time. I know you're a busy guy. Thank you so much. It's really great to see you again. Good to talk to you. And again, thank you so much. Good luck in everything you're doing. And I'm sure we'll stay in touch. Thank you.
Take care.